Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host, Bill Hirschman. I'm editor of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com, and I'm joined here again this week by our terrific panel. We start with Iris Acker, noted actress, director, and producer of the show. We also have the wonderful actress Karen Stevens, and next to her, the multi-talented Michael McKeever. This week, we have a very special guest, and we're glad you're here to welcome her. It's Kimberly Wick, the curator of the Wick Costume World Museum. I'm going to get that wrong.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Yeah.
And the person who helps her mother Marilyn run the Wick Theater, which is right next door now to the Costume Museum in Boca Raton. We've asked this so many times that you should probably have the answer memorized by now, but we never tire of hearing how this costume museum got started. Tell the viewers a little bit about how that occurred.
Well, it really kind of evolved. We've been in the costume rental business for nearly 40 years. And so when we started purchasing in about 2002 Broadway Wardrobes and started defining them and separating them from the rest of our collection, it kind of was like, well, I guess people might enjoy coming to see some of these things, and the collection grew and grew and grew, and sure enough, we had a tour, and that tour led to many other tours, and those tours led to many other tours, and now we've invested some time and money and energy in displaying them in a way that people would really enjoy it, and obviously they are. We have a tour every single day at 11 a.m., 7 days a week. And it's led by myself or my assistant. We guide folks through the museum, and they get a chance to relive a memory that they had from Broadway, and it's been a big success. It's become its own business and its own entity, and people are enjoying it, certainly.
Give some examples of some of the pieces that you have that people would want to make a point of coming to see if they have any love of theater at all.
Well, certainly the 1956 production of My Fair Lady is a definite, highlight of the tour, because again, so many memories were made at that time for folks. It ran for 2,700 performances. Lots of people saw it. They may have had their first date at that, while seeing that beautiful show. And so that's certainly a highlight. The King and I was on display last year. We own over 50 original Broadway wardrobes, so they're constantly alternating and bringing in new pieces. And the main design of the museum is to display 11 properties. So, in fact, My Fair Lady will be on display for the next year and a half for sure. But so King and I is just one of those shows, and Yul Brynner's wardrobe, and Gertrude Lawrence, and I know it's beautiful. And then we have some of Richard Burton's armor from the original 1960s Camelot.
Can people touch this stuff, or do you want them to stay away?
We try not to let them, but it's sometimes difficult not to touch. Not to look without your hands.
But especially armor. I want to touch that.
I was going to say, to preserve it, what is keeping it as it is?
Well, of course, we try to keep the humidity and all those things at the proper levels, 65% roughly, to keep the moisture out and to not have it too dry, because obviously that will dry rot the fabrics and the fibers. But we do, believe it or not, every now and then we take it off the hanger and give it a little shake and rehang it. Moving things around is good for the clothes. We have a little soft brush on a vacuum, very soft vacuum that we vacuum things down. You don't want dust collecting on the shoulders. We've all had it happen in our own closets. And the Broadway wardrobes, the majority are not rented, but there are a couple of properties that we do in fact rent. And believe it or not, that helps keep it it's good to
forgot about
launder the
that.
wardrobe every now and then.
Yes.
Physically launder it, not dry clean.
Well, it's funny because not only are you showing people these amazing costumes, but you're preserving history. I mean, we're talking about, the original costumes that Carol Channing wore, and as you said, Richard Burton and Yul Brynner. I mean, that alone, seeing that kind of history, being that close to these Broadway legends and Broadway history is really important.
Well, there's a lot of Broadway history sewn in through those threads, you know? In the old location in Pompano, I used to say, it's got to be haunted. And I know that but think of those incredible ghosts. I mean, all Broadway performers, and I will, I do believe that there were spirits there, and but they were very happy spirits. To know that, not me personally, but that my mother, my family, that we thought so much of these wardrobes to preserve them, so that hopefully our grandchildren will be able to see them and know what the real wardrobe for that original production really looked like. And we have many revival wardrobes as well, but those originals are more precious to me.
Do you ever have either people who wore those costumes
Oh, yes.
or designers like William Ivy Long, I know you have a relationship with, do they ever come and visit?
Well, we've had lots of incredible people, and I do say that when we present a show at our beautiful theater, the best reward is the clients leaving with a smile on their face and tapping their toe, and the smiles that we see as our guests come down into the luncheon area after they've been on the tour. That's a reward. But one of the other rewards is some of the amazing people that have seen the collection, and having to share it with them is incredible. One afternoon, I was standing there and I noticed a woman with tears rolling down her face, and I said, I know this can be very moving, and it happens often, so it's not unusual. But she said, my dad would be so proud, and I said, and so delighted, and I wish he was alive to see all of this. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry that he's not. And, I hear that story a lot. And I said, and you said proud. Now, what do you mean by proud? And she said, well, my name is Victoria Brenner. I'm Yul Brenner's daughter.
Wow.
She was just delighted. And we've had quite a few celebrities through, and we've been featured in Vogue magazine, and that piece really made it out to the marketplace, and a lot of people really saw that, which was interesting in the video as well. And of course, we've been on the Today Show a couple of times, and of course, we've been on Beacon Television with Iris, and that was a beautiful piece. Yeah. And through those media outlets, we've really had an incredible outpouring of people that really want to see it from all over the world, and I'm not exaggerating.
Well, I'm not famous, but I've had the experience of seeing a costume in the lobby that I wore, which was from the tour of Ain't Misbehaving.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That was pretty cool.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was pretty. I was like,
I wore that. And we own the original production, as well as the revival, as well as the national tour. And of course, as you certainly can attest to, it's only 5 or 6 costumes per production, but we have 15 or more of them, and it represents all those different productions, which is interesting to see how they changed. We learn from the wardrobe every time we buy a wardrobe and get a chance to a few spare moments to investigate how it's constructed and how it's made. It's a learning experience for us. So that's exciting. I'm delighted you got to see it.
Here's a question. Say I want to come to the museum. I know you've got the museum, you've got the theater, and you've got a really great restaurant there, all in the same building. Is there a way to see, take the tour, then have some lunch, then see a show at the same time? How does that work?
Absolutely. Again, at 11, it's a very good question. Let me throw in the pitch. At 11 a.m., we have the museum tour, and it is guided. It is choreographed to music, sound, lights, all kinds of fun stuff. So it really is a show all on its own, and you must come. You must come. And Iris has seen it 10 times. And then we go down the corridor. They do get to go backstage. They get to see all of the rigging and all that kind of stuff, which is, so exciting for so many of us that aren't tainted by the experience. And then we walk down the corridor, they look into the dressing areas, they see the green room, they get all that backstage zhuzh. And then they go into our Tavern on the Green inspired luncheon room, which you really do feel like you're at Tavern on the Green a little bit.
I love that story, too.
Because you brought in furniture and chandeliers
Yes.
and dishware from Tavern on the Green itself.
And we
right?
went to the auction. We said, 90% of the opening night cast parties were at Tavern on the Green. Well, of course, that's what our room should be inspired by. So, so we bought the chandelier and linens and china and silver and crystal, and we have chairs and all kinds of stuff that are on display as well. A little homage to Warner Leroy and his vision for Tavern on the Green. And well, then they have this beautiful lunch. And then they go in to see the show, many of them. And we have a little package that they can do the tour, the lunch, and the matinee.
Excellent. Do you have say I want to do this. Is there a website that I can go to?
You can certainly go to thewick.org.
There you go.
Thank you, Michael.
He's in marketing.
He's a marketing guy.
Well, it's
I
a
wonder
great event. I just
It
want
is,
people
it
to know
is.
how to do it.
Yeah.
It's Wick.
Thewick.org. And it will tell you about our event, or you can certainly call our box office. And today we have 6 people working in the box office because we're
Wow.
just at the end of the renewal of the season 2 subscriptions and opening up season 3. So you can call our phone number 561-995-2333, and we'd love to book you on an event. And
We'll
it is
put that
really is a
up,
lot
too.
of fun.
I'm interested in the rental. So the wardrobe that is actually given, they come in from North Carolina, they come in from Kentucky for their theaters. Tell me about that.
Well, we are the largest rental theatrical house in the country, and we do rent many, many wardrobes that are not Broadway wardrobes. But we also do occasionally rent some of this collection. Parts of the collection that we have decided are not quite as historic as others, are not fragile. The production of Titanic, there might be 6 or 7 costumes of each garment, and one of them, there is a set of wardrobe that has a little red ribbon in the label that means you may not ever rent this, do not touch it, this is red, stop. But the rest of the wardrobe for that particular show, we do rent, and we rent it to theaters all over the United States. And they are mostly equity theaters, of course, because in fact they have the manpower and the know-how to maintain it while it's in their possession. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, of course, they have the budget to be able to afford it. It doesn't rent the same as some little frock we've had hanging around for 20 years that we built at Costume World.
The red tag, the red label pieces, is it because of their historic importance or just because they're too fragile to go out?
No, the little red ribbon means that is the one we want to preserve.
Got it.
So if we rent the other wardrobes, and these are assets of Costume World, then we always want to be able to succeed in our mission, which is to preserve at least one set of each of these clothes. Perfect example, last summer we were given an opportunity. We had a client that really wanted to rent the original Broadway production of My Fair Lady. And he offered a very large sum of money, which at the time, in our first year in the theater, would have been very tempting to have taken. But we all looked at each other, mainly my mother and I, and said, one more rental of this wardrobe and it won't be here. And we declined. Wow. Our mission really is primarily to preserve the wardrobe. But, it's a business as well, and there's a line. And so that line is that little red ribbon.
One of the things that you also do is you're one of the 2 or 3 people at the Wick Theater who helps design or choose costumes for a production.
Sure.
We don't get a lot of costumers coming through here. And a lot of people think that if you're just going to go and pull costumes down off a rack, that's really all there is to it. Can you talk a little bit about even when you have costumes on a rack, what you have to do to actually decide what piece you're going to use, what you do with it when we see it on a stage?
Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you, pulling a show, and that's what it's called in our industry, is a lot more complicated than just walking into a rental house. And people think that, so-and-so maybe shouldn't be offered a Carbonell nod because they rented most of the wardrobe from Costume World. But let me tell you, even though our wardrobe is very defined and it is very clean, which is a novel idea in this industry, and it is organized pretty much, they still have to walk in and say, I'm doing Porgy and Bess. 1930s. Here's a beautiful rack of clean, lovely things for Porgy and Bess, but it doesn't say on the label, oh, this is Bess's wardrobe. You know, it takes a talent to be able to know the script and manipulate what would look best on that actor and how it relates to the scene. It is a lot more than just walking in and saying, oh, there's the king and I, let me just put it on my actors. You have to know your business to pull a wardrobe. And there's some incredibly talented wardrobe costumers here in South Florida that, you know, Ellis Tillman is, I'm sure you've had him on the show. He's an incredible vision for wardrobe. I mean, he really knows what to do. And he might look at Titanic and say, you know, those are lovely, but I'm going to go look in this wardrobe and find the right thing for my actor because she's kind of high-waisted or this and that's just not working. You have to know body structure. You have to know how to manipulate the wardrobe properly. And even our own designers in our shop, David Wells in our facility pulled our wardrobe for Man of La Mancha. He didn't just take it off a rack. He discovered the whole building and found what was right. I happen to think that the wardrobe is magnificent and certainly is part of the storytelling process in this show, as it should be for every performance and production. But it's an art to knowing what to pull.
I love that.
It's an art.
Because we've had that as Carbonell nominated as judges and such. As far as what you just said, isn't that wonderful? You just answered that question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there certain shows? I know a show like Ragtime is known for its 300 plus costumes. And then, are there shows that are?
We know. We just pulled it.
Yeah.
We helped Ellis. Yeah.
Are there shows that are just notoriously challenging when it comes to pulling?
You know, honestly, a show with only 6 costumes can be just as challenging as a show with 200 because those 6 are the only 6 times that you get to tell the story. So sometimes a show with 250 costumes is easier to pull because that one might fall into the background and that one just enhances that one. And you know, those 6 costumes can be just as difficult. You have to look at every piece as, again, that storytelling moment. And I only have this one moment to tell this story. And this garment is going to help tell it. So,
can I try on the hats? I think
yes.
At this time too, I remember in Pompano, yes, we could try on the audience, those who come.
Sure.
What do we put on white gloves for?
Well, we don't put on white gloves anymore because now they try the hats on in a different space. So they're not back in the museum. So they try the hats on and take pictures, and it's really fun to take pictures in front of the photograph. You know, our walls are covered with a 100-foot by 14-foot photograph of the interior, the crystal room of Tavern on the Green. So now they try on the hats, and it really looks like you're at Tavern on the Green. They're going to look back and say, it was already closed by that year. How did I get this photograph that's from 2015? So, yes, you can still try on hats, and people have a lot of fun with that. And it's a great memento to take with you when you leave the museum.
Has costuming always been a passion of yours, or was it something that you kind of got from your mom?
Well, I think a little bit of both. Of course, I'm a girl, and what girl doesn't love fashion and dressing up and all that stuff? And I'm often asked if I was ever on the stage, and the answer is no. I'm very comfortable being backstage and making everybody else look good. That's definitely my approach to it. But I love costuming, and I love manipulating the wardrobe and telling the story through the clothes. And that is certainly my first love. And I've designed many shows and have always been backstage, dressed in black, making everybody look good. That's my... it's a very glamorous job. I do laundry and you know.
Do you have, besides the iconic exhibits like My Fair Lady, do you have a secret costume or wardrobe that you're just crazy about, that's your special one, that you go, nothing better ever happened to this?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many magical wardrobes in the space. For instance, well, Passion is absolutely, the work of Jane Greenwood is definitely one of my favorites. Wow. Her revival of Once Upon a Mattress is just, I mean, she really is a magical designer. Tony Walton's wardrobe for A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. When I show that, and I, you know, of course we have Zero and Phil Silvers and Nathan Lane and Jason Alexander. I mean, all these fabulous people that all won a Tony Award for the role of Pseudolus. But I mean, I look at these wardrobes and I go, you know, who ever thought of putting grapes on the, you know, the courtesans' bras and panties, and, you know, I mean, it's just the inventiveness. You know, I go to Home Depot, I don't see building products. I see costumes. I see nuts and bolts and little springy arms, and, you know, and obviously there are some really incredible designers that think the same. You know, these wardrobes are really, every one of them a work of art.
How do you acquire new acquisitions to the museum? I mean, when you go to New York and you see a show on Broadway, you say, "Ooh,
we
that's
need to
going to be
have that."
yeah." Is that how it
That
works?
would be a good
How
one
does
to
that
have.
work?
Well, our first wardrobe that we ever bought was Bells Are Ringing in like 2002. It had been closed over a year or so, and we bought that wardrobe because we thought we had to start owning Broadway Wardrobe, or we wouldn't ever get an opportunity to work closely with the equity theaters in the country, because they really kind of demand this, you know, quality level of wardrobe. So that was our first one, and it wasn't that difficult. We made a few phone calls, we found the right person, and we purchased the wardrobe. And of course, we sent out a flyer to the couple hundred equity theaters in the country and said, you know, we have this lovely wardrobe. Why don't you, you know, consider it for any of your 50s shows? And of course, we rented it several times. Then we just kept on doing it by calling producers. Some of the acquisitions have been by dealing with the designers directly. Of course, William Ivy Long, we purchased some wardrobe recently. We're still buying all the time. If it makes sense, if it's historic, we're really desperately trying to buy the original production of Showboat. It's in boxes in Wilmington, Delaware, apparently. And, you know, time is of the essence because it's probably disintegrating in those boxes.
Sure.
And we need to get it bought and moved and refurbished and try to salvage what is salvageable. When we purchased the Dodger and Eves collection in 2005, 28 original Broadway wardrobes. Some of them it had been in a building for 11 years without air conditioning or heat. The hangers were rusted to the clothes. The zippers were rusted closed because, you know, many of these did not have, you know, plastic molded zippers, and the buttons were rusted to things. They had been dry cleaned and laundered over the years and never washed. So we were, you know, just getting the cleaning solutions and out of the clothing and trying to bring it back to life was our first challenge.
Right.
Before we ever had any dreams of displaying it for guests, we had to get it clean and get it in working order. And so that was a little evolution, but we still buy, mostly from designers and producers. And
Besides Showboat, what are the costumes
I knew this was coming.
dying that you go, I want, you know,
Well, I have
within reasonable economic limits?
Well, I have to tell you, Showboat is really, because, you know, it's generally thought, I don't know if you all agree, kind of to be the first big musical. I mean, we could go back, you know, further than that, but that would be a triumph for us to have and to restore it. And again, it really is our passion to restore them first. Sure. I don't know. There's lots of new ones. We've seen a few, you know, recently. I see Bullets Over Broadway's on tour. The costumes were fabulous. I said, if there's a chance we can buy that wardrobe, all that 20 stuff, oh my gosh, what a glorious, fun wardrobe. So that would be, I'd love to have that, but I don't think we'll ever get it. I'm sure.
And I know we're talking about the museum, but you have shops where you rent and sell
Yes,
that to the public.
Yes, we have stores, 4 of them located around the country.
4 of them.
Yep, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has been open since 1982. We operate it every day, and we have a manager there that oversees things, but you know, we're incommunicado every day, my mother especially. And then we have a beautiful store in Dallas, Texas, which has an audience with the corporate clients in that city. Believe it or not, they need, you know, all kinds of fabulous things for corporate events, and of course we do, you know, deal with the local theaters as well, especially in Pittsburgh, has, you know, thousands of theaters in Pittsburgh. And then Austin, Texas, which is, you know, keep Austin weird. We have a great little fun, funky store there. It's not actually that little. It's a 9,000 square foot store, but it's open to the public. And of course, this year, Halloween is on Saturday. And that is a big, big deal for our stores. And the Deerfield location is our 4th store and our main headquarters. And the stores will be very, very busy, so I encourage you to start thinking about Halloween early.
And they're all under the name of Costume
World.
World.
So
Wow.
when one of the things that has always fascinated me, I'd like you to talk about, is that there are a lot of theaters that are opening, and there are a lot of theaters that have closed. One of them is the Caldwell, which is where you're based,
Sure.
in the old Caldwell Theater building in Boca. You have come up with an interesting business model in which the museum is integral,
Sure.
in which you're not just running a theater, you're not just running a museum, you're not just running a restaurant. You've got a business model that integrates them. Can you talk a little bit about that quickly?
Well, in fact, without our base of ladies that viewed and visited the museum and had such an incredible time in Pompano, the theater probably wouldn't be. Because in fact, those ladies, we sent out a flyer to the 3,500 or so that had, that we had email information about, and told them that we had bought this theater and would you like to become a subscriber? And believe it or not, we had 210 ladies, just based on the faith that they had in my mother and myself, I hope, to take the plunge. And they bought a subscription on year 1, those 210 subscribers. So without those museum guests, it wouldn't have existed. Those 210 went on to become the 1,600 that we've had this past season, and hopefully we'll double that again for season 3. So
Bravo.
it is definitely integral. And they are our #1 fans. Because if they've enjoyed the show, they tell 10 girlfriends, and those 10 girls tell 10, and so on and so on and so on.
Well, we want to thank you. This has just flown by.
Oh yeah, no, I've
Thank you
been
very much for
fantastic.
spending time with us. And we want to thank you for joining us again and hope you'll come back next week. If you want to know more about what's happening in Florida theater throughout this region, take a look at floridatheateronstage.com. We have a calendar and we have news and reviews. But thank you very much. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to our guests. And thank you for joining us again on Spotlight on the Arts.